Welcome to Hi, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the panel discussion of KelpHR and ILA. It's a knowledge webinar and a panel discussion on gender and sexuality at the workplace. This is part of a two-part series, and this is the second part of the series where we will be discussing policies and practices. I'll go a little bit into the subject matter in detail shortly, but first, very warm welcome to you all, and thank you for taking the time to join us here this evening. This session is being cast live on Facebook and is also being recorded. A couple of points while the discussion is going on. You are invited to be active on the chat and share your views as the discussion unfolds. And later on, we have some time set aside for audience questions. At that time, you could unmute yourself and share your views as well. This is a safe space, and we want to keep it that way. We want people to feel free to share their views and also, keep the discussion away from, certain very sensitive topics maybe, but we may be sharing things that include personal experiences, which may include something that may trigger. Do feel free to excuse yourself if you need to. Having said that, great. Let's begin. Yeah, at the outset, I would invite Madhura to share a bit about the Indian Lawyers Association. Madhura, over to you.
Thank you, Amulya. So Indian Lawyers Association is a pan-India organization, a not-for-profit organization, where we have been establishing and energizing chapters all over the country. And we are committed to providing opportunities for quality professional development and supporting the enhancement of equality in the legal profession. We aim to promote the delivery of justice, facilitate effective law reforms, and advance the rule of law throughout India. So we do this by way of having local chapters, and we have about 75 chapters in different cities of the country. These chapters, they are free to bring in local flavor in the way they shape up the chapter operations. So they host numerous meetings, events, promote pro bono activities, create mentor-mentee relationships, provide an accessible network to the people and to the younger lawyers to learn, grow together, and basically have a lot of fun. So we'll be happy to invite all of you to join ILA in any capacity that you can. And we look forward to connecting with you shortly. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Madhura. Now, I would like to share with you a little bit about KelpHR. KelpHR was incorporated in 2013 with the vision to build workplaces that are safe, happy, and inclusive. The core belief is that happy employees make productive teams. And so Team KelpHR has been on a mission to enable organizations to set new benchmarks, not only in terms of best HR practices, but also in terms of overall organizational performance. KelpHR is a pioneer in simplifying the legal complexities in prevention of sexual harassment at the workplace. And along the way, we aim to demystify the less understood subject of diversity, equity, and inclusion as well. Today, I'm your host. I'm Amulya. I'm a trainer and an SME with KelpHR, lawyer by qualification. I've worked in corporate law for about 8 years. I'm also an artist, a theater artist, and a singer. I'm really passionate about helping workplaces leverage their diversity so that employees can thrive. I really care about social action within organizations and workplace equity. And I believe that any work carried out with curiosity, drive, and empathy can really make a difference. I'm really excited to be here. This is my first time hosting the knowledge session, and I have two brilliant panelists with me. Couldn't be more excited about what we're going to talk about today. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to the panel members. Our first panel member, Nishtha, is an equal rights activist, a TEDx speaker, a scientific research scholar with the Guru Nanak Institute for Research and Development in Mumbai, a scientific officer with the genomics department at Lilac Insights, Navi Mumbai, also a member of the POSH IC and a member of the Q Empower ERG at Lilac. Nishtha is also a fellow with the Queer Youth Leadership Program and the Keshav Suri Foundation, supported by the Canadian Consulate at Mumbai. Nishtha is also a preview team member at the Kashish International Film Festival. So please welcome Nishtha to the panel, everybody. Our second panel member today is Simi Chowdhury. Simi is a human capital professional with over 17 years of diverse experience in designing people and culture strategies in organizations. Within the human resources function, she has demonstrated expertise in talent management, organization development, diversity and inclusion, and corporate social responsibility. From working in large organizations such as Wipro, Bosch, Capgemini, and Sutherland, Simi is now heading learning and development and DEI for a fast-paced scale-up, Tridents. Pardon me if I mispronounced it. She's certified in several psychometric assessments that help in assessing leadership potential, and she's also a certified coach. Simi was conferred with the Accelerate Best D&I Leader for her active contribution in building diverse teams and designing large-scale diversity and inclusion initiatives. Thank you both for being with me here today.
Thank you, Amulya. Glad to be here.
Great. So without further ado, let's go on to the topic of discussion today, which is gender and sexuality at the workplace. Right? Sorry. Go this way. Yeah. So when we talk about gender discrimination at the workplace, we are still a little stuck in terms of how we really understand. So if you can see on the screen here, there's a Google search of gender-based discrimination in the workplace in India. And as you can see, all the results are relating to how women are discriminated against in the workplace. And that is absolutely an area that needs attention and is an area of concern where there is no equality that affects everybody everywhere. But just see how we have a limited view of what is really gender discrimination. And when we zoom out from that a little bit further, we have a limited view of what is gender, right? So today here, we want to share with you a little bit about gender discrimination, but it's not about discrimination against women at the workplace. We want to share with you a little bit about how there are a spectrum of identities, and it's not just a binary of male and female, right? So the Constitution of India, our Bible, as you can say, as citizens of India, that is our Bible, that prohibits discrimination on grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth. It states that there shall be no discrimination against any citizen, right? We even have a Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act, which says in Section 9 that no establishment shall discriminate against any transgender person in any matter relating to employment, including but not limited to recruitment, promotion, and other related issues. But these are laws, right? And laws tell us what to do. They don't always tell us how to do it. And so that's where we would say policies come in. For an organization to understand how it is going to make sure there is no discrimination on any of these grounds, as we have seen, what is the guiding light? So you have policies. Organizations are freer to draft policies which are in line with their, with the culture that they want to foster and the values that they espouse. So, and also it will set out a how-to for the organization itself, right, on how it is going to carry out these values and how it's going to ensure that it's zero tolerance towards discrimination and harassment is really going to be enshrined and protected and implemented. So having said that, my first question this evening is to Nishtha. I would like to ask, so sorry about the screen. I would like to ask, are policies enough to prevent discrimination? Do share with us, maybe from your personal experience and your professional experience, what do policies do? And would you say that they're a starting point? Do share with us your views, Nishtha.
Thank you. Thank you so much for asking this question, Amulya. Well, from a trans person's point of view, I would want to specifically highlight that policies may not really make a difference for us. I have been repeating this fact that a lot of us are not being kept informed about what is it that is going to help us do better in, let's say, public spaces or even in workplaces. Policies are made and kept on the shelves or in um, HR documentaries and stuff, but it don't really reach out to the employees. It don't really help employees know what it can create a difference for them. While I say that, there are so many policies across different places, be it with our very own constitution, but how much of it has been implemented is the question. We have really had the correct intention to bring in policies in place, but implementation is something that we are lacking. Implementation is something that really needs to be worked upon. Action is something that needs to be taken upon. And I believe we are really taking baby steps towards heading to the right direction. And while we do so, it is very important that we reach out to individuals who are being affected, who are facing the challenges in real, and seek for solutions that could help them in a better way. While a lot of policies have been in place, hearing from the members of the community or the ones who have been affected is not something that we have worked upon. We have been enforcing policies without even realizing what the consequences could be. There needs to be a lot of work that has to be done in order to keep people informed about the pluses and the minuses through these policies. And only when there is this conversation happening, I believe things would change. But again, coming to the fact that policies are just lying there, but not being informed to the targeted audience, especially the community members. It's as simple as, not realizing that every employee is contributing to the organization, or every citizen is, contributing to the country's betterment, and just having it there in black and white and keeping them uninformed about what the policy is about, or how it could really contribute in making a major difference in people's life. I believe it is high time that we really not have these policies lying in the shelves, but actually being spoken about or shared with individuals, be it having communication through newspapers or television advertisement or campaigns, and creating a difference, so that people know how things could be better for them as they move forward in their journeys. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Nishtha. Absolutely hear you. It's not just enough to have a policy on paper and in name, right? We need to make, and like you said, the interest group that is affected by it has to be part of the consultation to draft that policy, and then has to be part of the implementation as well. Otherwise, it's just a tick the box action. And that's what ends up happening in a lot of situations. And we should
Absolutely.
try and avoid that.
Amulya, I would want to add one more point here. It is very important for us to realize that there is something called as reverse mentoring, which most of the corporates these days follow, wherein you reach out to, the member who is being affected or who belongs to the so-called minority or DEI spectrum, and engage in conversations to know more about them and see how we can, contribute to make their journeys easy. One such example, which I would really want to highlight is, if I'm not wrong, at the Chennai High Court, where the judge really took efforts to reach out to members of the community before even passing a particular judgment. In fact, there were so many learnings that they, could get from the community members, and it really helped them, formulate a lot of, policies or laws in place. And actually, it was a beautiful example set by this judge, where, a lot of us could learn and actually put our best practices, in place. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Nishtha. I remember that, I think that judgment that you're talking about, and Madras High Court has been doing a lot of good work in being open and accepting and willing to change its position or be more inclusive. I believe there was even a glossary that was put together by members of the community, and that was taken on board by the Madras High Court. So yeah, great point. Thank you for bringing that up. So as Nishtha just shared with us, yeah, policies are not enough if they're just on paper and if they're just sitting in the shelves. We may have an intention to have an inclusive policy, an inclusive organization, but it doesn't stop there. The implementation is really where it lies, right? But still, it's good to start somewhere. It's good to have a document that sets out what we believe in as an organization and our objectives. And so let's say we have a good policy. Let's say we have a document that really is able to hit the right notes and address the concerns of the interest group that it is trying to protect. How should an organization go about really trying to enforce such a policy, right? As an employee, am I bound by the policy? And what is do I have to embrace or accept the policy, or do I comply, whether I agree with it or not? What do you say about this, Simi?
Thank you. I think this question is pretty tough, and
that's why it's for you.
Right. So Amulya, see, action for bias is what is the, I'm so sorry, bias for action. Oh my God, what's wrong with me? Bias for action is what the whole world needs right now when it comes to DEI. Policies are great, but let me tell you that there's a huge effort that organizations put in to understand DEI and to create the policies. And in most cases, I have seen that once the policy is in place, there is a sense of really wanting to do the right thing. Okay. Now, I'll give you a very interesting example, right? In one of the organizations that I was working in, we had just launched the same-sex hospitalization benefit policy, right? And we were a little guarded in the way we rolled this policy out. So we didn't want to use, words like, your sexual partner, and so we just said partner, and we just kept the whole communication so safe, right? We didn't want to talk too much and give that whole LGBTQ flavor. And after the launch of this policy, I reached out to the Comp and Ben leader, and I asked, hey, how many people have made use of this policy? How many people have sort of enlisted their partners in this policy. And she says, we have 57 people. I'm like, wow, man, we have so much of diversity in the organization. It's just amazing. And then but then something just didn't seem right. And we went back and we looked at the data, and we realized that the way we communicated the policy, people understood it wrongly. So there were people who actually enrolled their brothers, their sisters, their fathers, their mothers. And when we're like, why? You said, right? I mean, same gender partner living together. They're my partners. They're living in the same house as me. So that's how they understood it. And so coming back to the whole policy thing, policy is very important. Awareness is even more important, right? How do you make people aware of the policies? How do you do those whole, socialization sessions? How do you do those unconscious bias trainings? Those play a very, very big role. Coming to very specifically to your question on should an employee comply? I mean, I'm sorry to say, but yes, they need to comply, like it or not, right? Every corporate holds a very powerful position as a corporate citizen. They need to do the right thing. They need to, walk the talk. And therefore, they need to be very selective in the people that they're hiring. Many a times it is not possible, but organizations who've gotten it right, they do an assessment of people based on, their awareness of diversity and inclusion. The moment employees are onboarded, you need to sign those statutory and those, mandatory documents. So one of those becomes your code of conduct that you sign as an employee, where it very clearly lays out that these are things which I cannot do, right? So we need guardrails because we just have so many people around. And should employees accept? Yes. I mean, the belief that everyone should accept, but then, we need people to also comply with the organization's, principles, vision, mission. So in my organization right now, we have what we call the 15 leadership principles. And in that, we embrace diversity and inclusion is one such statement. And this statement is now translating into the recruitment questionnaire, right? Where when we, interview people, we need to check on this quotient as well. And it's an important thing for a manager also to demonstrate everybody. So while we call it leadership principles, it just touches every employee in our organization. So yes, I mean, these are non-negotiable. So so yes, employees have to comply. So yeah.
Fantastic. No, it's really good to hear that. It's a stand we have to take, right? Even as professionals in HR and DEI.
I mean, think about it. When Section 377 was still out there, right? Yes. There were so many progressive organizations that said, I don't care. We'll still do whatever it takes to support the LGBTQ community, right? So they were the trailblazers here, right? So as a corporate citizen organization, you yield immense, and or you need to hide people, and you need to tell people what you stand for, like it or not. So yeah.
To quote Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility.
I love it.
So just as because Simi's point reminded me of this point that I wanted to share. See, we can have policies that are gender neutral. Now, there's a lot of talk about gender neutral policies in POSH, and you would have come across something that's we are a gender neutral company. We don't care about gender. Everybody is welcome. So is that really what? So the question that I would want to ask is, I mean, just to put it in everyone's minds, is should we aim to be gender neutral or should we aim to be gender inclusive? Just to give you an idea of the difference that we're trying to show here. Gender neutral. Now, if you remember, if you know the yellow face emoji that we use in all our texts, right? There is no gender that you really assign to that, right? It's just a yellow, it's abstract. It's just a yellow face and anyone uses it. We all identify with it, but only to a limited extent. Now, if we really want to express something, a little more detailed, we would probably use one of the other emojis that WhatsApp and other apps have given us, which help us express maybe a little further about our identity or the way that we look, or the thing that we are doing at that point. So the difference that I would like to point out is that a gender neutral policy may be avoidant, may be disengaged in the kind of language that it's using, right? Where it's saying, don't declare anything. We don't want to know about your status or your identity. Everyone is welcome, but we don't want to engage with it, right? So an example of a gender neutral policy, I'm not saying that this is actually there in place anywhere. A gender neutral policy a dress code would probably say everyone, regardless of gender, has to wear pants. Now, in a sense, yes, it's making everybody on the same footing, regardless of whether they're men, women, non-binary, transgender, doesn't matter. Everybody has to wear pants. But are we really allowing people to be their whole selves if we are telling them that they can't wear anything other than pants, that they cannot express who they are through their clothes, because everybody has to wear pants, right? So let's just try to think of, when we are drafting policies, when we are talking about gender inclusion and against discrimination, let's think about, are we really being inclusive or are we trying to be neutral? Neutral is clinical. Inclusive is open and vibrant. Okay, we want to be able to hold space and celebrate all identities. And it may cause a little bit of discomfort, but we all were talking in our in our pre-session call, when there's a little bit of discomfort, that's where growth really happens. All right, so with this, I'll stop sharing the PPT. And I would love to go on to my next question to Nishtha. And then, of course, I would love Simi also to weigh in on this later on. So when it comes to hiring initiatives and diversity within hiring initiatives, how do we make sure that new joinees who may be from the community, whether they have declared their status or not, right? How do we make sure that they are integrated into the ecosystem, that their identity is not compromised, but there is still acceptance within, from the other employees and from the ecosystem itself? Do share.
Thank you for asking this question, Amulya. Well, for a lot of organizations, hiring may be as common as hiring in cishet person, but let me tell you, it may not be same in case of the LGBTQI community members, especially when they may be identifying themselves beyond the gender binaries, that is beyond a man or a woman. While we are willing to hire individuals from the LGBTQIA spectrum, it is very important for us to have gender sensitization workshop prior. The need of doing this is just to ensure that anybody who is coming from the queer community is not being discriminated or may not feel discriminated while they are reaching to our organization and going to work with us, as they would want to continue their career journey. So having gender sensitization workshop would be a primary focus that I feel would really enable a queer person to work in an all-inclusive space. When I say gender sensitization workshop, it does not it must not be restricted only to the managerial level. It must seep into all the levels, right from the gatekeeper to the highest level of the hierarchy. Everybody must be sensitized enough. While we take efforts to sensitize people once, thinking that it's a tick mark activity, it may be a possibility that People may come up with preconditioned mindsets, and they may still indulge into activity which may be discriminatory, or which may even lead to curiosity harassment, as I've learned from KelpHR team. It is very important that we sensitize people with very basic things, such as being addressed with a name of their choice, or even using appropriate pronouns, or asking if we don't know. A lot of times, people get discriminated while they enter into spaces where they're going to work. In the beginning itself, they get greeted by saying, "Good morning, ma'am." And it has happened to me a couple of times while I entered into passport office, or spaces where people were ideally expected to be sensitized enough that they address us incorrectly, while a lot of them would see me wearing, effeminate clothing, or rather having an effeminate gender expression. They would still address us sir. So, I mean, these are very small, basic things which I feel are very, very important for people coming from a community to experience better one in their workplaces. While I also mentioned about being called by our preferred names or pronouns, it is also important to know that our policies have to be inclusive. Just as how Amulya has beautifully explained the difference between gender neutral and gender inclusive, I don't think there is any better way to make our policies all inclusive, and not just having policies, but even restrooms inclusive. A lot of times, we may have restrooms divided into men's or women's, but it's a restroom. It's a space where a person needs some privacy. And all of us have an inclusive restroom in our homes too, without any bifurcations. So why not equip ourselves with facilities which would be beneficial for people coming from the queer community, and assist them, a little more while they are using our infrastructure. Having conversations, having communication with queer members would enable us to know if we are doing things in an appropriate way or not. I spoke about reverse mentoring, learning from queer people, about their needs, their requirements, and as an organization, how we can help them or facilitate in order to, provide them whatever they require. It could be as basic as providing them a mentor, or providing them a buddy who could assess them and know how they can grow well in the organization. While a lot of us, are hired at a very low level, people underestimate our capability. And it has been an experience for a lot of queer members that we stick to the job that we are doing, and we do not grow, or we do not get to climb the ladder of success. Well, it is just lack of um understanding, I believe, and lack of assessment to help the person reach, to the higher level. And there have been people who have taken higher positions in the organizations as well. What we need is sensitivity. What we need is empathy. We don't need sympathy from people to actually, be around or be in the mainstream society. It is very important to know that a lot of us may also experience harassment at workplace in different forms, and to have policies that protect us, that gives us enough scope or space to be safe, is equally important as much as having an opportunity. And that just does not restrict within the workspace, but even outside. I will be talking more about this, but a lot of us also get to work in shifts, night shifts particularly. Having security, to ensure that we reach home safely is uh, important too. And not just that, but even accommodation. We don't talk about spaces, where we also enter in, considering that, oh, this is something very common. But finding an accommodation for a queer person is not very easy, especially when we come with a mindset where we are preconditioned with myths, and we don't verify them and learn the facts. So yeah, here are a few of the things which I believe as organizations we can take up and help a queer person have a better journey while they work in corporate spaces. Thank you.
Wow, fantastic. I mean, so many little things to double click on over there. But especially that one thing you said, that so many trans people just stay in the roles that they started in, and do not try to aim for other positions just because of everything that comes with it, right? Sensitizing a whole new team about everything. Yeah, so that organizations should aim to be a safe space for growth, right? And imagine you have such a huge talent pool just waiting to go, and people are holding themselves back because they don't feel safe enough to be ambitious. Such a shame, really. And that aspect about accommodation, I remember this was actually a case with Kochi Metro. They had an initiative to give jobs. They had a quota for trans people, but although they came up, they turned up to work, they were not able to get accommodation around their place of work. And so, there was no point to that initiative. So yes, think about A and then go all the way to Z, right? Otherwise, it's going to fall apart somewhere in the way. Thank you so
Amulya,
much for sharing.
Amulya, I want to stress upon this fact that we are celebrating Pride Month, in the month of
Yeah, I
June,
did mention that.
and all the organizations want to show that we have, inclusive workplaces with having rainbow flags being flashed in, their surroundings. But let me ask, how many of us would have queer people actually working in such spaces? How many of us are really taking efforts to uplift people and ensure that they are really working with us for a longer duration, and there is no attrition or zero attrition? You've given a very beautiful example of the Kerala Metro, Kochi Metro, and that is just one example that came out. But let me tell you, there are so many other organizations where queer people are working, yet not able to, retain their opportunity because they face challenges outside the organizations too, and those needs to be addressed. It just requires conversation. Giving a guarantee on an organization's behalf could really create a difference for a queer person to have that job opportunity and lead a life with much respect and dignity, which is not the case for many of us, knowing that we have been kept away from a lot of basic human rights, basic opportunities, which each one of us maybe on this platform are privileged to create for our own selves. Let us give a thought to this. Let us question our own thoughts and perception and see how we could take steps to become more inclusive, and then talk about having inclusive policies and inclusive infrastructure and inclusive organizations and so on. Thank you.
Back to the conversation.
I mean, Amulya, if I may, I loved one word which Nishtha just used, which was empathy, right? And your question with respect to onboarding. So again, I'd like to, cite an example of something that I did not do right. So my heart was in its right place. I was passionate. I wanted more people from the community to be employed in the organization I was in. And in the whole enthusiasm, right, I managed to out a person because I didn't know. I should have known better, right? And it was the onboarding of a person. And I was like, okay, so listen, this is a person who is from the community, and therefore, this is what we need to do in order to support this person. And later on, I realized that this was not right. So, so again, I go back to my, the importance of awareness, right? That you might be an ally, you might be driving D&I, but these matters need you also to be more aware, right? Now, thankfully for me, the person who joined was out and proud, so he didn't have an issue. But had he been closeted and I managed to out him, I would not have lived with it. I mean, so, that's an example I want to quote about how important it is to make sure that everyone, from the recruiter to the panelists to the onboarding team to the buddy to the mentor to the manager, every single, including the security staff, including the housekeeping people, right? There were situations where trans people entered, a particular washroom of their choice, and I realized that the housekeeping people gave nasty glares, and that made me go back, oh shit, I never sensitized them. So again, the onboarding just is something which you need to do, but with making sure a lot of ground is covered in terms of socialization, awareness, and the messaging from the top. The word, Nishtha, that you used, empathy, right? We talk a lot about empathy, and empathy typically, we've heard of the definition of empathy, which we call the golden rule, that treat people the way you would like to be treated, right? And this is not what we've put in our awareness sessions. We said there is a platinum rule, which is treat people the way they want to be treated, right? And therefore, do not assume that any LGBTQ member will have the same needs. Do not assume that every woman has the same needs, right? And therefore, if it needs you as an HR or onboarding person or recruiter or manager or whatever, right, to just put in those additional 5 minutes to ask and not assume, because that's another important thing we say, ask, please don't assume, right? That, hey, is there anything that you need us to do in order to make your onboarding, a success? Had I asked this person that, hey, is there something that I can do more? Probably the person would say, yes, tell everyone I'm, out and proud, and, I need this bit of support or not. And so ask, don't assume. So this is a philosophy that we sort of should follow in onboarding. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Simi. Thank you, Nishtha. And I think both of their brilliant answers, just that it boils down to that simple point. Have a conversation, ask, don't assume, right? Super. I'll stay with you, Simi. I wanted to ask you, because of your experience in other aspects of, in other departments as well. So what we were saying earlier, that organizations can be a force for social action, but it need not just be, what it's doing for its employees, right? So when it comes to something like CSR, are there initiatives that you would like to, share with us about how they've gone, anything focused on the community?
Absolutely. So CSR and DEI are two very, very different things, right? But again, there is a linkage, because if you go back to people who find themselves in the minority class, be it LGBTQ community members, be it persons with disabilities, be it women, they typically, you go back to the supply chain, right? You will see that they don't have access to education, access to, equal rights. Their human rights overall are compromised, right? And that is where an organization can, take a couple of steps back and say, all right, can I, as a corporate citizen, come in and help the community in any way? So there are these beautiful interventions that are going on by multiple, NGOs on uplifting trans people. I've worked with charities that support the education of girl children of sex workers. Just imagine. So they are, so much more marginalized, right? You're talking about people with disabilities not having, the right technology skills. They don't know how to code. But go back and see, they've never received the, access to education, access to inclusive, infrastructure. They probably couldn't make it to school. They couldn't understand what was taught to them. today there's just so much. There's AI, there is machine learning, there is so many different ways through which you could impart education to a child with disability, right? Or to anybody from the marginalized community. So a lot of organizations today are doing work in the space of imparting interest in girl children to learn coding. Why? Because we don't have those many women coders, right? We don't have women data scientists as many as we would like, right? So if we can go back the supply chain a little bit and try to do some work, I think that's great. It's a very win-win sort of a situation in my mind, where you can train people, you can and then make them employable, right? So that's the role. I think that's a powerful role. That's, when we choose projects, CSR projects, especially employability is a favorite pillar in most companies' CSR agenda. So again, in the employability pillar, if we can look at who are we trying to send our outreach message to, and so I think choosing vulnerable communities and focusing on their employability skills. When we look at education as a pillar, again, focusing on probably children with disabilities, children who come from extremely marginalized trans children, right? So I think that's very powerful, and
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay. So folks, I actually had a couple more questions, but I thought since we have 10 minutes, I'd love to throw it open and see if any of the audience members have any questions they would like to ask. I'll give it a minute or two, and if nothing, then I will go back to my questions. I think,
Amulya, can I ask one question?
Please, Smita.
Yeah, so if any organization wants to set up on the path of being inclusive, if I have to ask the panel members that give me initial steps that they can take, okay, like at least these basic steps should be taken to begin this journey. So what would it be?
If for anyone who could not hear, Smita's question was, if an organization wants to take its initial steps into becoming more inclusive, what are some of these first steps, right? Like maybe top 3 things that they can do.
I can go first, if that's okay, Nishtha.
Yes, sure. Thank you.
Right. So I don't know top 3 or top 2, but the first one is get a subject matter expertise on board, right? And they're very helpful. First, they know the landscape, they know the problem, they know the grassroots level issues. And secondly, because they are subject matter experts, they will help you. And when I say you, it could be a D&I manager, it could be a recruitment manager, it could be an HR manager, to create that business case. Because HR managers, D&I managers, they need help sometimes in articulating the business case for D&I whenever they go to business to seek sponsorship, to seek approvals. I still think it's ridiculous, when we talk about business case, but this exists. Many times when I have got stuck, that I don't know what should be the way to present this, that, why hiring people from the LGBTQ community is important for us, or why hiring persons with disabilities. So not many people, again, the law is a great, business case, but I've always taken the help of these specialists, these SMEs who have helped me, articulate the business case, and I've mostly achieved success. So first things first is get an SME on board, talk to SMEs, gather more information, build your awareness, build that so-called business case. And then, you really, D&I is top-down approach. Okay. So once that's done, get your CEO's support, right? Get your senior executive support. Super, super important. And thirdly, from my experience, I would say focus first on inclusion and then go out and start, hiring people. You already have people who are from diverse backgrounds, but please first focus on getting your house ready, getting your house inclusive, accessible, before you go out and get people in, because that's the worst thing that you could do, where you get people and they're harassed and they're ridiculed, they're bullied, and they cannot function. Like, you hire a person with disability who's coming here and seeing your pay slip isn't accessible, your IT isn't accessible, your infrastructure isn't accessible. So that's something which I would say would be the top three things to keep in mind. Most importantly, the CEO support. Very, very important. Nishtha, over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Simi. I guess you have covered pretty much everything. Doing the homework before even beginning the DE&I initiative is very important, and there's no better way than including a SME, could really contribute majorly. Like I've mentioned, it is very important to get people on board who know what they have been through, and getting their expertise is something that can contribute majorly to organizations that really want to take this all-inclusive approach. Second of all, I would stress upon having policies and creating enough awareness about the existing policies and the changes or the amendments that are made in order to make them all inclusive is something that can also be worked upon. And most importantly, having conversations with the members of the community. Like Simi mentioned, each one of us have different needs. Each one of us may come up with their own set of challenges. It is only and only through conversations we will be able to learn, and we will be able to evolve, and we may become better allies to our community. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So it seems we have a couple of questions at this point. Is there any provision given, Swapnil asks, is there any provision given under Indian Constitution and international law to help to resolve this issue? So thank you, Swapnil, for that. Before I hand it to the panelists, I just mentioned that, yes, there are provisions in the law. We have in the Constitution of India also, there is a stance taken against discrimination, and internationally also there are conventions that are signed. But I think we talked about it earlier, that laws may be starting points. They may tell us what to do. So the how to is still in our hands. So panelists, I would love to hear if you want to add anything on this.
Absolutely, I second that, Amulya. Really, I mean, there are provisions, but the implementation is something that we really need to work upon and see, how we can really help it reach to the grassroots level and empower and uplift the affected folks. So yeah, that's about it from my side. Simi, do you have anything to add?
I have a slightly, a different angle to bring in, where the law is probably anti-gay. Like, there are many states in United States, for example, that have these anti-gay legislatures, right? And, if you see the CEO of Salesforce in 2016, he actually said, I'm not going to do any business with the state of Georgia because of its anti-gay laws, right? So there's clearly a law which a CEO is challenging. And he called out to the CEOs of all the other tech firms as well, because he says that my organization employs people from the community. For what joy would I send them to the state of Georgia to do business and get discriminated or harassed? And therefore, I'm taking, So yeah, Ruchira, let's talk about Indian laws. Yes. So yeah, I mean, we do have the transgender persons, protection of rights, and thankfully we've gotten these the fact that 377 was ruled down, etc. I'm not aware of any other laws from an India standpoint, which makes it all the more important for us to have more laws in an India context. But the reason why I brought in a global context is that sometimes we feel that things are really bad in India, but globally also, so this is a global problem. Diversity and inclusion is a global problem, and there are states back in US which actually have anti-gay and all of those sort of laws. So I think we need more laws. At least people should be able to get married, the same gender marriage, and the adoption and all of those.
Succession, yes.
Yeah, so we need more laws. Yeah.
Actually, to elaborate on that point, Simi, so far what we have in India is just decriminalization. Just to say that no, these identities are no longer criminal. But there is, I mean, we need to have a whole positive infrastructure that says we accept and embrace all these, and these are the support that we will give to all, to support, I mean, to fix the deficiencies that have happened in the past. Thanks, Ankita, for bringing that up. The NALSA judgment, I mean, and even NAS Foundation, I mean, the first judgment that talked about, that was so beautiful in how it really talked about these things. There was a line in the NALSA judgment that said, we owe an apology to the transgender community for what we have done, like for the generations of harassment and discrimination, and just outright just ignoring, neglecting that community for so long. So yes, in some places we see sparks of brilliance, but overall the laws have a long way to go in really creating a positive infrastructure for the community. All right, any closing comments from the panelists? We've come to the end of the webinar, so I would love to hear your closing comments, and we can go on to the rest of our evening.
Simi, would you want to go first?
Nishtha, you should go ahead, please.
Okay. Well, I strongly believe that before having policies and laws in place, let us begin with our own selves and work to become more inclusive. Before going to organizations and legal rights, I believe beginning inclusivity at our very own homes is something that can really create a positive impact. It could be as simple as speaking to our own children, having a conversation, letting them know that people are human beings and there's no different way of treating anyone with any kind of discriminatory instances. Let us be more open-minded, let us be more inclusive, not just by saying, but actually putting it into action. It could be as simple as empowering a trans person or a gender non-binary person by giving them an opportunity. I quite often say that you don't need to have a house help who has to be a woman. It could be a man, it could be a trans man, it could be a transgender woman, and so on. Give them food, give them an opportunity to learn. I mean, you can start with as basic as communication skills or computer skills. Uplift them, give them an opportunity to go out, find themselves a job opportunity, and empower someone else. I mean, that's the least as an individual I feel we can do, apart from the big things that we are aiming at. Let us start working on small little things, take baby steps, and work towards being truly inclusive. Thank you.
Thanks, Nishtha. I think that was beautifully put. I would just say that how we raise our young ones will determine the future. And I'm so glad that the new generation of people, the Gen Z, the Generation Alpha, which my daughter is part of, she's 15 years old. I'm so happy that they're more knowledgeable, more inclusive than we are, and we need more of them. So how we raise them is very important. That's one message I have. The other message is that symbolism is good. We need to stand up for things. We need to have the rainbow colors. And the other day I bought a Proud Ally T-shirt. And Amulya and Nishtha, you saw me wearing it.
Yes.
And when I bought this about a month ago, 2 months ago, I was wondering that can I go beyond the symbolism? And I reached out to a particular organization that trains trans people. And I said that, would you be okay if I mentored a couple of trans people? I want to give back. And if through some way they can get some skills which help them, in the corporate world, I would like to do that. So if you have not yet gone to the, stage of symbolism, go there, show up as an ally, but don't stay there. Take the next step of trying to do something, right? And every small bit counts. But then after some time, don't get comfortable with the small bits, because then you need to, challenge yourself and take larger, more drastic steps as well to create that point. So that's what I feel.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thanks, Amulya.
Beautiful. So
Thank you for
include
sharing.
at home, but don't stay there. Go ahead. Well, it's been a wonderful time here with you both and the rest of the audience. I'm really grateful for this conversation that we've been able to have and for the space that we were able to hold.
Thank you, Amulya. I must say this is not just informative, but absolutely inspiring, to hear people talk, and Nishtha especially, I think, opened my eyes to so many, things which I probably was blind to. And, we all carry the flag, but we really don't do much about it. So thank you so much for this. Absolutely wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So,
Some nice comments coming up on the chat window. Thank you very much for all of this. Yeah. Thank you, KelpHR team, Smita, Amulya, everybody, and Nishtha. I'm so glad that I've been able to connect with you. Let's stay in touch.
Likewise,
And I wish to learn more from you, Nishtha.
Sure.
Thank you very
sure.
much.
Thank you. Thank you, Amulya, Smita, Ishwarya, the entire KelpHR team and the ILA team for having this conversation. Thank you, Simi. I really appreciate your thoughts, and we are definitely going to keep in touch and see how we can collaborate and work together.
Absolutely. I'd love to be a part of this as well. And if there's anything I can support and help with, I'll be more than happy to.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.